A long time ago, in a peaceful village surrounded by tall trees, sweet mangoes, and quiet rivers, there lived a young girl named Cynthia. She was the daughter of Mama John and Papa John. Her parents were simple farmers who loved their daughter very much. Cynthia was not just beautiful, she was breathtaking. Her skin glowed like ripe palm oil under the sun. Her eyes sparkled like stars. Her lips were red and full. Her waist was slim, and her hair was thick, long, and black like night. People said the gods took their time to mold her. But with that beauty came a heart full of pride. Every morning while others were working, Cynthia would wake up, wash her face, oil her skin, and sit in front of a small mirror her father had bought for her from a trader. She would twist her neck left and right, pout her lips, bat her lashes, and laugh. "Ha ha," she would giggle. "Who is more beautiful than Cynthia? No one. Not in this village, not in this world," she would whisper to herself. "Cynthia, you are like a goddess. You deserve to marry a king, not just any king, but the richest, most powerful, most handsome king ever." Her mother would come into the room and sigh. "Cynthia, please help me peel the yam. We need to cook before your father returns from the farm." But Cynthia would hiss, "Me? Peel yam? My fingers are too fine to touch dirty yam. Let John or James do it. They are not as beautiful as me." Her mother would shake her head sadly and walk away. When other girls went to the stream to fetch water, Cynthia stayed behind to brush her hair. When the women swept the compound, she sat and painted her nails with palm oil and crushed hibiscus petals. When the village gathered for community work, Cynthia stayed indoors and posed in front of her mirror. Even the mirror seemed tired of her face. Her friends loved her, but she didn't return their kindness. One by one, they began to marry. First Zara, then Queen, then Mark. But they didn't marry rich men. They married humble farmers, hunters, and fishermen. Cynthia laughed at them all. "Ha! Zara, look at your husband. His teeth are like roasted corn. Queen, your man rides a bicycle. Mark, yours doesn't even have shoes. What a joke." They tried to ignore her, but sometimes they cried in secret. Still, they were happy in their marriages, and that made Cynthia even more jealous. "Let them enjoy their poor love," she would say. "Cynthia will marry a king, wear gold from head to toe, and ride in a carriage pulled by white horses." One market day, the village was alive with sounds and colors. Women were selling tomatoes, peppers, and fresh okra. Children were running and laughing. Drummers played soft beats under a mango tree. Cynthia dressed herself in her finest wrapper and a shiny blouse that glistened like the morning sun. She tied her hair with bright red cloth and rubbed palm oil on her skin to glow. Then, she walked to the market like a queen. Her waist danced as she walked. People stopped to look. "She's beautiful, but her heart is empty," one old woman whispered. "She walks like the ground owes her something." A young boy giggled, but Cynthia didn't care. She loved the attention. Suddenly, she bumped into someone. Her basket fell. So did the other person's firewood. It was Mama Michael, the oldest and most respected woman in the village. Her back was bent from age, her hands shaky, and her legs slow. The firewood scattered all over the place, and the old woman fell on her knees. Everyone gasped, "Oh no, that's Mama Michael." Cynthia stood tall, looked down at her, and said with disgust, "Why are you standing in my way like an old goat? You ruined my outfit. Do you even know who I am?" The old woman looked up, her voice calm. My child, I'm sorry. My eyes are not as sharp as they used to be. Then stay in your hut, Cynthia shouted. Don't bring your rotten wood near my beautiful clothes again. People began to whisper. Apologize, Cynthia. She's an elder. She's old enough to be your grandmother. But Cynthia turned her back, hissed, and walked away. Mama Michael picked up her firewood slowly, shaking her head. Then she raised her hands to the sky and said in a voice like thunder, Cynthia, the mirror you worship will soon turn its back on you. May your beauty melt like candle wax. May your pride become your prison. You shall not see beauty again until you live with the ugliest man on earth. Then, and only then, shall your heart learn. The market went silent. Even the birds stopped chirping. That night, Cynthia looked into her mirror and felt a strange heat on her skin. She laughed nervously. What kind of joke is this? But the mirror cracked slightly. Her reflection shimmered. The next morning, Cynthia screamed so loud, the entire village heard. What is this? This is not me. Her smooth skin had become rough like sandpaper. Her nose had grown wide. Her once full lips were dry and cracked. Her hair was falling out in patches. Her once beautiful eyes were dull and lifeless. She ran outside crying. Chickens scattered. Children screamed and ran. Ah, Mama! Ah, Mama, look at me! She wept. Mama, I'm cursed! Look at what has happened to your beautiful daughter. Mama John wept too. My daughter, this is the result of pride. You hurt Mama Michael. You refused to listen. You mocked others. I'll apologize. I'll say sorry. I'll give her food. I'll sweep her hut. But when they went to Mama John's house, the old woman was not there. No one knew where she had gone. Cynthia became a shadow. Her mirror was covered with cloth. She no longer walked proudly. She stayed indoors hiding. Villagers gossip. Did you hear what happened to Cynthia? Her beauty vanished like smoke. Now she looks like the palm kernel shell. The once proud Cynthia was now silent, humble, and lonely. And that was when a mysterious traveler arrived in the village. He wore a long robe, his face hidden by a straw hat. He asked for Cynthia and gave her a message. Your curse can only be lifted if you marry the oldest, ugliest man alive. A man with rotten teeth, smelly skin, and a heart full of demands. Marry him not with your body, but with your soul. Only then shall you be free. Cynthia cried for days. Must I marry a monster to become whole again? But deep inside, she knew this was her test. Her journey of pain and transformation had just begun. Cynthia sat alone in her room, refusing food. Her skin had grown worse. Her beauty, once her pride, had become her sorrow. The villagers stopped whispering. They no longer feared or envied her. Some even pitied her. One morning, there was a loud knock at the door. Her mother opened it, and there stood a strange man, short, hunched, with a big belly, long white beard, and skin as wrinkled as dried okra. His mouth had only 3 brown teeth, and he carried a long walking stick that made a thump with every step. His clothes were mismatched and torn. His eyes were sharp like a lizard's, and his breath smelled like old snails. I am Judas, he said with a crooked smile. I have come to marry Cynthia. Mama John nearly fainted. Marry who? Cynthia. I heard she's looking for someone like me. Cynthia came out of the hut, her heart beating fast. When she saw him, she froze. Her first thought, he looks worse than the curse itself. But then, her reflection in the water beside the house reminded her of who she had become. She remembered the words of the messenger. You must marry the ugliest man on earth, not with your body, but your soul. Only then shall you be free." She looked at Judas. He was chewing something loudly. Smack, smack. Smelled like fermented beans. "Do you accept me?" Judas asked, picking his nose with his pinky. Cynthia swallowed hard and nodded slowly. Yes. The villagers came out in shock. "Ah! Cynthia is marrying this creature. Wonders shall never end. Maybe she needs help." The wedding was simple. No music, no dancing, just quiet shock and silence. Judith wore a torn red wrapper. Cynthia wore a faded dress and no jewelry. Her pride had been washed away. That night, in their small, stinky hut, Judith snored like thunder. The bed shook, the windows rattled. "Is it a lion?" she whispered in fear. His feet smelled like rotten yam. He drooled in his sleep. He farted with every turn. Cynthia sat by the window, wide-eyed and shaking her head. "I am in a nightmare, but I must endure. I must change. I must be better." As time goes on, Judas was not just ugly. He was mean. He ordered her like a servant. "Cook my food now. My back is itching. Scratch it. Wash my feet." He complained about everything. "This soup tastes like stone. Why are you breathing so loud? Be quiet." But through it all, Cynthia didn't complain. She woke early, cleaned the house, fetched water, cooked his food, and washed his dirty clothes. Clothes that smelled like forgotten onions. She smiled at children again. She apologized to her old friends. She began helping at the village stream, carrying firewood for elderly women, and greeting even the beggars. One day, a small girl tripped in the market. Cynthia rushed to help her, cleaned her bruises, and gave her food. Mama Michael, the old woman Cynthia had once insulted, was there, watching, sitting quietly under a mango tree. She whispered, "Home, she has changed." Later that night, Cynthia went to bed. Judith was snoring again, louder than ever. She looked up at the moon through the window and whispered, "If I ever become beautiful again, I promise I will never laugh at anyone again. I will never forget what it feels like to be broken." That night, Mama Michael appeared in her dream, glowing like moonlight. "My daughter," the old woman said gently, "your beauty is back. Not in your face, but in your heart. You are now truly beautiful. When you wake, you shall see." And when Cynthia opened her eyes the next morning, she rushed to the water pot and looked in. He screamed, but this time it was joy. Her skin was smooth. Her eyes were bright. Her hair was full again. Her lips glowed. Her beauty had returned, but stronger, deeper, fuller. She ran outside singing. The whole village gathered. "She is beautiful again. The curse is broken." Judas came out blinking. He saw her and stepped back. "You're not my wife. My wife is ugly." Cynthia smiled kindly. "Thank you, Judas. You were part of my journey. But who will cook for me now?" he cried. She handed him a calabash of food. "May you find someone who loves you as you are." And with that, she left the hut. Her parents cried and embraced her. Soon after, a handsome and rich prince from a far kingdom came to the village. He had heard of Cynthia's change, how she grew from pride to humility. He saw her and fell in love, not just with her face, but with her heart. Their wedding was the biggest the village had ever seen. Dancers danced, drums echoed, women ululated, even the trees swayed in joy. But Cynthia never forgot. She treated her servants kindly. She greeted every old woman. She played with children. She even visited Judas once and gave him new clothes. She no longer worshipped her mirror, because now her beauty came from within. 3 years of silent sacrifice lived inside one thick brown envelope. In 30 seconds, a cruel stepmother stole it completely. Her ticket to a better world vanished. But what would Adesuwa build from the ashes? Once upon a time, in a large, dusty compound in Nigeria, lived a quiet girl named Adesuwa. Her world was divided into 2 halves, the peaceful dark of the early morning and the heavy, tense hours when her stepmother, Mama Efe, was awake. Adesuwa did not just clean the house. She moved through the shadows like a silent ghost. She learned very early that in this house, being invisible was the only way to survive. Her true mother, a woman with warm eyes and a gentle voice, had died when Adesuwa was only 9. Her father, Chief Oifo, was a man who loved false peace more than the truth. To avoid arguments, he married Mama Efe, bringing a dark, cold storm into his daughter's life. Mama Efe never raised her hands to hit Adesuwa. She did not need to. She used her eyes and her words like sharp little knives. If Adesuwa washed the floors until they shined like glass, Mama Efe would walk over the wet tiles with dusty shoes, look directly into Adesuwa's eyes, and give a small, cold smile. "A house girl will always be a house girl," she would whisper, leaving the words to burn deep inside Adesuwa's chest. Mama Efe had a daughter of her own named Efe. Efe and Adesuwa shared a small bedroom, but they lived in completely different worlds. Efe was beautiful, loud, and lazy. Her side of the room smelled of strong, cheap perfumes and was always covered in bright, borrowed clothes. Efe loved the mirror. She would sit for hours, painting her lips and talking about leaving the country. "Nigeria is too dusty for my skin," Efe would sigh, fanning herself with a magazine. "I am going to live in London or Dubai. I will just pack my bags and fly." Adesuwa would sit on the edge of her hard bed, listening quietly. She knew that wishing upon a star did not buy an airplane ticket. While Efe painted her nails and waited for a magic miracle, Adesuwa was secretly building her own door. Under Adesuwa's pillow lay an old, black Bible. It belonged to her dead mother. The pages smelled of old paper and dried rose petals. Hidden deep inside this Bible was a thick brown envelope. This envelope was Adesuwa's entire heart. For 3 long years, she had traded beautiful fabrics in the hot sun. She smiled at rude customers, saved every single paper note, and smoothed out the crumpled money with her tired hands before hiding it in the envelope. She was not waiting for a rich man. She had applied for a special international business visa. It was a strict program for hard-working young women to learn real trade skills abroad. Every night, while Efe slept and dreamed of easy money, Adesuwa would touch the brown envelope in the dark. She could feel the thick paper. She could feel her freedom. Adesuwa kept her secret perfectly hidden. She swallowed Mama Efe's daily insults. She ignored Efe's lazy laughter. She stayed quiet, humble, and patient, waiting for the day the postman would arrive. She thought her careful silence would protect her. She did not know that a secret in a jealous house is like a hidden fire, and the smoke was about to catch Mama Efe's attention. The long-awaited approval letter was finally on its way, bringing a beautiful joy that would spark her greatest tragedy. The day the letter arrived, the sky was a bright, perfect blue. Adesuwa held the crisp white envelope in her hands. The official stamp on the paper felt like a magic key. She read the words 4 times. Her heart beat fast like a wild drum. Approved. After 3 years of silent sweat, her business visa was finally real. Because her heart was pure, Adesuwa made a fatal mistake. She still believed in the warmth of family. That evening, when the house was quiet, she called her father into his room. She placed the letter gently on his wooden desk. "Papa, my visa came through," she whispered, her eyes shining with tears. "The business program abroad. I have been approved." Chief Oifo's tired eyes widened. A genuine, proud smile spread across his face. "Adesuwa, this is a wonderful thing. Your mother would have been so proud of you today." Those sweet words wrapped around Adesuwa's heart like a warm blanket. But she did not know a dark shadow was standing in the hallway. Mama Efe had heard every single word. Mama Efe stepped slowly into the room. The temperature seemed to drop. "What is happening here?" she asked, her voice smooth like warm honey. "What letter is that?" Chief Oifo smiled at his wife. "Adesuwa's visa has been approved. She is traveling abroad." Mama Efe turned to look at Adesuwa. She stretched her lips into a wide, bright smile, but her eyes remained cold, dark, and completely empty. "Is that so? Congratulations, Adesuwa." The fake smile sent a sudden chill down Adesuwa's spine, but she was too happy to listen to her instincts. That night, Adesuwa carefully placed the visa, her passport, and her saved money inside the thick brown envelope. She tucked it safely under her pillow, resting her head exactly over her dreams. She closed her eyes and fell into a deep, peaceful sleep. When the golden morning sun touched her face, Adesuwa woke up. She reached her hand under the pillow. Her fingers touched the flat cotton bedsheet. Nothing. She sat up quickly. She felt under the pillow again. She checked the cold floor. She threw the blankets off the bed. Her hands began to tremble violently. A cold sweat broke out on her forehead. The air in the room suddenly felt too thin to breathe. The brown envelope was gone. She looked across the small room. Efe's bed was perfectly made, but it was completely empty. The closet door was open. Efe's clothes were gone. Efe's travel bags were missing. The heavy truth crashed into Adesuwa's chest like a falling stone. Adesuwa ran out of the bedroom, her bare feet slapping against the cold tiles. She ran into the main parlor. Mama Efe was sitting comfortably in her favorite chair. She was holding a cup of hot tea with both hands, blowing gently on the steam. She looked as peaceful as a saint. "Where is Ife?" Adesuwa gasped, her voice breaking. "Where is my brown envelope?" Mama Efe did not look up from her tea. She took a slow, quiet sip. "Efe has traveled," she said calmly. "That is all I know." "Traveled? With my documents? You gave my life to her." Adesuwa cried out, her chest burning with panic. Chief Oefo hurried into the room. Adesuwa turned to him, tears streaming down her face. She begged him to speak, to fight, to demand the truth. But Chief Oefo looked at his fierce wife, and then he looked down at his own feet. He swallowed hard and said absolutely nothing. His silence was louder than a thunderclap. In that silent moment, he abandoned his daughter completely. Adesuwa stopped crying. The hot panic in her chest slowly turned into freezing ice. She looked at the woman who stole her future. She looked at the father who refused to protect her. She realized, with crystal clarity, that she was entirely alone in the world. Without saying another word, Adesuwa walked back to her room. She packed a small bag with her few simple clothes. She walked out of the family house, stepping into the dusty street. She had no money, no visa, and nowhere to go. But as the heavy metal gate closed behind her, she made a silent promise to the morning sky. "This will not be the end of my story." Adesuwa walked far across the noisy city until she found a place she could afford. It was a tiny, dark room in a crowded building. The walls smelled of damp earth, and the rusted tin roof groaned loudly whenever the wind blew. When the heavy rains came, Water dripped onto her thin sleeping mat. She had no bed, no thick brown envelope, and no family. But in the quiet darkness of that leaky room, Adesuwa realized something powerful. When you have lost everything, you have absolutely nothing left to fear. She needed to survive. The next morning, she walked down the busy textile mill road. The air was thick with the smell of roasted corn and exhaust fumes. Suddenly, she heard a sound that cut through the noise of the street, the fast, rhythmic of a heavy sewing machine. She followed the sound and stepped into a large, colorful tailor shop. The air inside smelled of machine oil and fresh cotton. At the center of the shop sat Mama Roland, a sturdy, serious woman with sharp eyes that looked like they could read a person's soul. Adesuwa bowed her head respectfully and asked for any work. "I do not need a tailor," Mama Roland said, her voice deep and strict. "I only need someone to sweep the floor and keep quiet." "I will take it, Ma," Adesuwa said. For the first few weeks, Adesuwa swept the dusty floors. But she did not just sweep, she watched. She had a secret gift. To ordinary people, cloth is just something to cover the body. But to Adesuwa, every piece of fabric had a spirit and a secret language. She observed how the soft silks wanted to flow like water, and how the heavy cottons fought against the needle, stubborn and proud. She learned to read the cloth just by looking at it. One late afternoon, the shop was quiet. Mama Roland was taking a break, drinking water in the corner. Adesuwa was sweeping near a large table when she stopped. Her fingers gently reached out to touch a discarded piece of rich, green velvet. She did not just touch it, she caressed it, her eyes tracking the invisible lines of how the dress was supposed to be shaped. "You!" Mama Roland's deep voice suddenly boomed across the room. Adesuwa froze, dropping her broom. Mama Roland walked over, her sharp eyes staring intensely at the young girl. "You look at the cloth like you know its secrets. Have you done this before?" "Small, Ma," Adesuwa answered humbly, keeping her eyes down. "I used to sew small things in the dark." Mama Roland did not smile. She pulled a beautiful, difficult piece of raw silk from the shelf and threw it onto the table. "Small is not what I see. Sit down at that machine. Show me what you can do. And do not waste my material." Adesuwa sat down. Her heart fluttered, but her hands were completely steady. She pressed her foot on the metal pedal. She did not need a measuring tape to guess. She let the fabric speak to her. Her hands moved like pure magic, guiding the stubborn silk smoothly under the rapid strike of the needle. When the machine stopped, the shop was dead silent. Mama Roland picked up the finished piece. She held it up to the bright sunlight streaming through the window. She checked the seams, the curves, and the invisible stitches. Her strict face slowly softened into a look of absolute shock. "Who taught you how to do this?" Mama Roland whispered. "Patience and pain, Ma," Adesuwa replied softly. Mama Roland placed a heavy, warm hand on Adesuwa's shoulder. She looked deeply into the young girl's eyes. "You have a rare fire inside you. You will not sweep the floor ever again. I will teach you the business of the city, but you must promise me one thing. Never let your hands lie to me." That was the exact moment the spark caught fire. 5 years is a master sculptor. It chips away the weak and polishes the strong. For Adesuwa, those 5 years were a quiet, relentless climb out of the dark. For the family she left behind, those same 5 years were a slow, agonizing descent into ruin. If you walked down the wealthy, tree-lined avenue of Reservation Road today, you would not find a girl sweeping dust. You would see a magnificent shop with tall, spotless glass windows, Above the door, bold golden letters caught the sunlight. Adesuwa Oifo Couture. Inside, the air was cool and smelled of rich vanilla perfume and crisp new linen. The fast clack of sewing machines was no longer a sound of desperate survival. It was the rhythm of a booming empire. Adesuwa moved through the shop like royalty, a yellow measuring tape draped elegantly around her neck. 3 young apprentices now swept the floor for her, watching her hands with the same quiet awe she once gave Mama Roland. Adesuwa did not just make dresses anymore. She created armor for the most powerful women in the city. She had built a glittering kingdom entirely from the ashes of a stolen envelope. Far across the city, the old Oifo compound was slowly rotting. The bright paint on the walls was peeling off like dead skin. Chief Oifo was now a frail, quiet shadow, his bad knees keeping him trapped in a chair all day, staring blindly at a buzzing television screen. Mama Efe's fierce, terrifying pride had slowly starved to death. To keep up the illusion of wealth, she had secretly borrowed heavy amounts of money from angry neighbors just to buy rice and palm oil. She ignored the knocks at the gate, surviving only on the arrogant hope that Efe would soon return from abroad, dripping in gold and crisp foreign dollars. But the wheel of karma is perfectly round, and it always finishes its turn. It happened on a quiet, sweltering Tuesday afternoon. A rusted, coughing taxi stopped outside the broken metal gate. The door creaked open, and Efe stepped out into the dry dust. She did not look like the bright, boastful girl who had stolen a future. The foreign land had chewed her up and spat her out. A stolen ticket does not come with the discipline required to survive. Without Adesuwa's quiet endurance, Efe had hated the cold mornings and the strict rules of the business program. She was kicked out within months. She had spent the last few years hiding in freezing, crowded rooms, washing dirty dishes in the dark, just to buy cheap bread. The heavy shame of a stolen, wasted life had completely broken her spirit. Efe stood in the dirt, her skin dull, her hair unkempt and brittle. She was carrying one single faded plastic bag. It dropped from her hands and hit the ground with a pathetic, hollow thud. Mama Efe rushed out to the courtyard, her heart leaping with desperate hope. But when she stopped at the gate and looked into her daughter's exhausted, empty eyes, the suffocating truth wrapped around her throat. There were no dollars, there was no gold. The stolen visa had been a curse. They were drowning in deep poverty, while the girl they had thrown away into the streets was now the talk of the entire city. And hunger is a very cruel master. It forces even the proudest lions to swallow their pride and beg. It was a bright Saturday morning. Inside Adesuwa Oifo Couture, the air was crisp and cool. Soft, elegant music played in the background as Adesuwa ran her fingers over a new shipment of imported lace. Suddenly, a soft, hesitant knock tapped against the thick glass door. Adesuwa looked up. Standing on the hot pavement outside were Mama Efe and Efe. They looked completely out of place, like two ghosts who had wandered into the wrong world. Adesuwa did not jump. Her heart did not race. She calmly signaled her young apprentice to step into the back room. Then, she stood tall behind her grand mahogany table, folded her arms and waited. The 2 women pushed open the heavy glass door. The blast of cold air conditioning seemed to make Efe shrink even smaller. She kept her dull, tired eyes glued to the shiny marble floor, her shoulders hunched in deep shame. Mama Efe walked in slowly. She looked at the dazzling crystal lights, the plush velvet waiting chairs, and the beautiful dresses hanging like artwork. Finally, she saw a framed piece of paper on the wall. the receipt from Adesuwa's very first big job. Mama Efe's face twisted with a painful mix of awe and complete defeat. "You have done very well for yourself, Adesuwa," Mama Efe whispered. Her voice was weak, stripped of all its former poison. "I can see that," Adesuwa replied. Her face was an unreadable mask. "Sit down." Mama Efe took a shaky breath. "We are not in a good position right now. Things have been very hard for us at home. Efe is back, and we are trying to survive. We have heavy debts. People are threatening us. We came here today to ask for your help." The luxury shop fell perfectly silent. Outside, the city roared, but inside, the air felt incredibly heavy. Efe began to cry quietly, hot tears dropping onto her dusty, worn-out shoes. In that silence, Adesuwa remembered everything. The memory played like a lightning flash in her mind. The cold mornings sweeping the dirt, the cruel insults about washing floors, the panic of searching under her empty pillow, the leaky roof in her dark room. She felt the ghost of that old pain, but to her surprise, she felt absolutely no anger. She realized that holding on to bitterness is like drinking poison and expecting your enemy to die. Adesuwa pulled out a velvet chair and sat directly across from them. Her voice was steady, calm, and terrifyingly clear. "I am not going to give you any money," Adesuwa said. Mama Efe's jaw tightened. A brief spark of her old, arrogant fire returned. "So, you just brought us inside to humiliate us after everything?" "I did not invite you here, Ma," Adesuwa said, her voice dropping to a firm, commanding whisper. "You came to my door, and I am speaking to you with much more respect than you ever gave me. What you did to me 5 years ago was purely wicked. You stole my sweat, my tears, and my future. But I did not build this empire out of anger. I built it to survive. I will not write a check for you today, because money cannot erase the past, and I will not fix the giant mess you made for yourselves." Efe finally looked up, her eyes red and swollen. "Adesuwa, I am so sorry," she sobbed, her voice breaking. "It was a terrible mistake. My life wasn't supposed to end like this." Adesuwa looked at her stepsister with a profound, quiet pity. "I know you are sorry, Efe, but the harsh world has already punished you enough. I do not need to add to it." Adesuwa stood up, her beautiful silk dress flowing around her. She walked to the heavy glass door and pulled it open. She did not do it with rage. She did it with the breathtaking power of a woman who completely owned her space and her peace. "I genuinely hope you find a way to fix your lives," Adesuwa said softly. "But that chapter of my life is completely closed." Mama Efe looked down. She had no clever words left. She walked out the door, and Efe followed her like a broken shadow. Adesuwa watched them step out into the blinding sun, disappearing slowly into the dust and noise of the street. Adesuwa closed the glass door, shutting out the heat. She stood alone in her magnificent shop, breathing in the cool, sweet air. She had walked through a blazing fire and come out as pure, unbreakable gold. She walked back to her table, picked up her measuring tape, and returned to her joyful work. Moral of the story: what God has truly destined for a hard-working hand can never be stolen by a wicked heart. It can only be delayed. Keep your spirit clean, endure the fire, and your own hands will build your promised land. 3 years of silent sacrifice lived inside one thick brown envelope. In 30 seconds, a cruel stepmother stole it completely. Her ticket to a better world vanished. But what would Adesuwa build from the ashes?